Have you ever wondered why a single frustrating moment, a harsh email, a traffic jam, or an unexpected bill, can hijack your mind, disrupt your focus, and make your entire body feel tense or wired for hours? That's not just emotion. That's biology. More specifically, it's cortisol, a hormone released by your adrenal glands in response to perceived stress. While cortisol is essential for survival, helping us respond to danger and stay alert in times of need, chronic elevation of this hormone has quietly become one of the most damaging forces behind brain fog, belly fat, emotional reactivity, and even accelerated aging. What's fascinating is that cortisol is not just a stress chemical, it's a powerful signal that shapes everything from how your hippocampus stores memory to how your prefrontal cortex regulates attention and decision-making. When it's balanced, cortisol keeps you sharp and responsive. When it's dysregulated, it slowly robs you of mental clarity, emotional resilience, and even physical health. So the real question is, how do we control it? Not eliminate it, but master it. That's where the science becomes both fascinating and empowering. Researchers from Stanford, Harvard, and the University of Zurich have shown that specific habits like controlled breathing, strategic light exposure, and even reframing your perception of stress can directly influence how much cortisol your brain tells your body to produce. In this episode, we'll explore 6 science-backed tools to help you do exactly that. With all of that, we'll look at how your brain's threat detection system works, why stress isn't always harmful, and what simple protocols can bring your cortisol back into balance without supplements or extreme routines. We'll break down how to regulate your nervous system, reset your physiological stress response, and even use brief discomfort to build long-term calm. You'll learn why some people thrive under pressure while others shut down, and how that difference is trainable. By the end, you'll not only understand the biology of stress, you'll know how to work with it. Because the goal isn't to avoid stress, it's to become the kind of person who can stay steady, clear, and grounded, no matter what life throws your way. To truly understand and regulate stress, we need to examine it through 6 critical scientific lenses, each offering a practical tool for calming the mind and body. First, we'll explore how the brain's threat detection system, particularly the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, evaluates danger and determines whether or not to trigger a cortisol response. Second, we'll look at how deliberate breathing, especially through extended exhalation, can rapidly shift your nervous system from a reactive to a regulated state using pathways connected to the vagus nerve. And we'll connect that to somewhat tied into the same principles of the antinufo. Third, we'll uncover how light, particularly early morning sunlight, and the reduction of artificial light at night plays a direct role in cortisol timing and stability via your circadian rhythm. Fourth, we'll discuss the surprising power of labeling your emotional state, known as affect labeling, which research shows can reduce amygdala activity and lower stress reactivity in real time. Fifth, we'll dive into the concept of framing stress, how your mindset about stress, backed by findings from Stanford and Yale, can determine whether it becomes a source of damage or growth. And sixth, we'll introduce the idea of stress inoculation, exposing yourself to short bouts of controlled discomfort, such as cold exposure or breath holds, to retrain your physiological tolerance for stress. Each of these 6 tools is grounded in neuroscience and behavioral science, and none requires medication or expensive gadgets. What they do require is awareness, consistency, and a willingness to experiment with how you relate to stress itself. These are not hacks, they are protocols based on how your brain and body work under pressure. When practiced with intention, they don't just reduce cortisol, they help you build a deeper kind of calm, one that comes not from avoiding challenge, but from becoming more resilient in the face of it. Now, let's begin by understanding how your brain decides what counts as a threat and how that decision shapes your entire biology. Your experience of stress begins long before cortisol floods your bloodstream. It starts in the brain's threat detection system, a rapid, subconscious process led by 2 key regions, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala acts like an internal surveillance camera, constantly scanning for danger, even in seemingly neutral situations. When it perceives a threat, whether it's a harsh tone in a conversation or an overdue bill, it sends signals to the hypothalamus, triggering the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, which leads to the release of cortisol. This is a useful survival mechanism when you're in genuine danger, but in modern life, where threats are often psychological rather than physical, this system can become hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex is designed to evaluate context and override unnecessary alarm signals from the amygdala. But chronic stress weakens this balancing mechanism, making you more reactive over time. A study from the University of Wisconsin found that people with consistently high perceived stress showed structural changes in their prefrontal cortex, reducing their ability to regulate emotions and make calm decisions. What's happening here is that your brain is being trained to interpret the world as dangerous, even when it isn't. But this can be reversed. One of the first tools to apply is pattern recognition, building awareness of when your stress response is being triggered unnecessarily. The moment you feel your heart rate rise or your jaw tighten, pause and ask, is this dangerous or just uncomfortable? This act of reflection brings the prefrontal cortex online and gives it a chance to regain control. Another tool is the practice of response labeling, where you note, either mentally or aloud, what's happening. I'm feeling overwhelmed, or that comment triggered anxiety. Studies from UCLA show that this simple practice decreases amygdala activity and helps shift you out of a reactive state. By understanding that your brain is not just reacting to what's happening, but to what it predicts could happen, you start to reclaim power over the entire stress cascade. And with consistent use of these awareness tools, you train your nervous system to pause before reacting, buying you time, clarity, and space to respond with intention. If your brain is the command center for stress, then learning how it labels and responds to threat is the first step in transforming your biology. When brain is best, passive restoration for biology. Because stress isn't just about what happens to you, it's about how your brain decides to interpret it. Once your brain perceives a threat, the body's next move is to prepare for action. And one of the fastest, most powerful ways to influence that response is through your breath. While you cannot directly control the release of cortisol through willpower alone, you can modulate the systems that influence it, especially the autonomic nervous system, that since you do breathe, think, you do more or less influence the system. What the research shows is that specific breathing patterns can send signals to your brain to shift out of a fight or flight state and into a more calm parasympathetic mode. One of the most effective patterns is called physiological sighing, a technique where you take one deep inhale through the nose, followed by a second shorter nasal inhale, then a long, slow exhale through the mouth. A 2023 randomized controlled trial from Stanford School of Medicine found that just 5 minutes of this breathing practice daily significantly reduced cortisol levels and anxiety scores, outperforming mindfulness meditation in several participants. Here's what's happening in your body. The long exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which acts as a brake on your heart rate and downshifts your entire stress response system. Think of it as pulling the emergency cord on an overactive engine. The beauty of this tool is that it's portable, no equipment, no setup, and it works within minutes. You can use it before a difficult meeting, during a wave of anxiety, or even as a daily reset to build long-term resilience. If you're finding this helpful so far, consider subscribing. This channel is built to give you practical, science-backed tools that you can use immediately. Now let's take it one step further. You can stack the benefits of breathwork with posture. Studies from the University of British Columbia show that sitting or standing with an upright, expansive posture can reduce perceived stress and increase testosterone to cortisol ratio, a marker of calm confidence. So the next time you're stressed, pause and do two things. Adjust your posture to be upright and grounded, and take 3 to 5 physiological sighs. It might sound simple, but you're engaging deep neurobiological mechanisms that can stop a stress spiral before it begins. The body is not just reacting to the mind, it's co-regulating with it. And when you learn to master the breath, you learn to calm the command center. These tools are not just for emergencies, they are for training your baseline. Because calm is not a personality trait. It's a practiced state. Cortisol does not simply rise and fall randomly throughout the day. It follows a natural rhythm, deeply influenced by light. This rhythm, known as the circadian cortisol cycle, is one of the most powerful levers for regulating your stress response and energy levels. Under ideal conditions, cortisol peaks about 30 to 60 minutes after waking, helping you feel alert and focused, and then gradually tapers off as evening approaches, allowing the body to wind down for sleep. However, in modern environments characterized by artificial light, irregular sleep schedules, and late-night screen exposure, this rhythm becomes disrupted. The result is often a flattened cortisol curve, where levels stay elevated into the evening or fail to spike properly in the morning, leading to fatigue, irritability, and poor cognitive performance. Fortunately, research from the University of Colorado and the National Institute of Mental Health shows that exposure to natural sunlight within the first 60 minutes of waking can restore this rhythm. Here's the protocol. Step outside and get at least 5 to 10 minutes of direct morning sunlight without sunglasses, even if it's cloudy. Morning light contains the blue spectrum wavelengths that signal the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock, to initiate the cortisol peak and reset your biological timing. This also promotes the release of serotonin, which later converts into melatonin, improving sleep quality that night. Equally important is reducing exposure to bright artificial light in the evening, especially blue light from phones and screens. Using dim, warm lighting after sunset and limiting screen use for at least 60 minutes before bed can help prevent late-night cortisol spikes that interfere with sleep and emotional regulation. A helpful tool is wearing blue light-muting glasses in the evening or switching your devices to night mode. Think of light as a hormonal switch. You're either signaling the body to be alert and ready or to begin calming down. Your brain evolved over millions of years in sync with the rising and setting sun, and your stress system still depends on those environmental cues. So if you've ever felt tired in the morning but wired at night, the issue might not be your workload, it could be your light exposure. And the solution doesn't come in a bottle. It comes from the sky. The simple act of stepping into morning light and dimming the lights at night is one of the most profound yet overlooked ways to regain control over your stress biology. One of the most immediate ways to disrupt the stress cycle is not by suppressing emotion, but by naming it. This practice, known as affect labeling, involves putting feelings into words, and it's backed by some of the most compelling neuroscience on emotional regulation. When you experience stress, your amygdala becomes highly active, preparing the body to react. But studies from UCLA, including fMRI research led by Dr. Matthew Lieberman, show that simply labeling what you're feeling with phrases like, "I feel anxious," "I'm overwhelmed," or "this is frustration," reduces activity in the amygdala and increases engagement of the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for cognitive control. In plain terms, naming the emotion helps the brain calm the alarm. This is not about rumination or wallowing, it's about recognition. Much like how pain feels less threatening when you know what's causing it, stress feels more manageable when you can identify it. What's powerful here is the brain's response. Once you've labeled the emotion, it becomes an object of observation, not something you are being controlled by. Here's how to apply this tool in real time. The moment you feel a surge of tension, pause and silently name what you're experiencing. You can say it internally or out loud, but the key is to be specific and honest. This is fear, this is pressure, or even this is stress about the unknown. This act of labeling doesn't solve the external problem, but it gives you internal space. It moves you from reactivity to reflection, from automatic patterns to conscious choice. In fact, a 2018 meta-analysis published in Emotion Review found that individuals who regularly practiced affect labeling showed improved emotional regulation and lower baseline cortisol levels over time. If this insight is helping you, consider liking and subscribing. This channel exists to turn breakthrough science into tools for better living. You can also extend this practice through journaling. Spend 2 to 3 minutes each day writing down your stressors and the emotions they trigger. Research from the University of Texas has shown that expressive writing, especially when it includes emotional labeling, can reduce physical symptoms of stress and improve immune function. The takeaway is this: emotional clarity is a biological regulator. When you name what you feel, you rewire how your brain responds. And that creates a ripple effect, not just in how you handle stress, but in how others experience you during challenging moments. It's not about denying discomfort. It's about defining it so you can move through it with awareness instead of being swept away by it. What if the way you think about stress could actually change how your body reacts to it? This isn't just motivational talk. It's measurable biology. Research from Stanford University, led by psychologist Alia Crum, has shown that your stress mindset, meaning your beliefs about whether stress is harmful or enhancing, can influence everything from cortisol release to cardiovascular function. In one landmark study, participants who were taught to view stress as a performance enhancer rather than a threat experienced better focus, improved problem solving, and even healthier physiological stress responses, including more adaptive heart rate variability. Here's what's happening in the brain. When you interpret a stressor as a challenge instead of a threat, your prefrontal cortex stays more engaged, your amygdala fires less intensely, and your body produces more DHEA, a neuroprotective hormone that balances the effects of cortisol. This means the same situation, a deadline, a hard conversation, or public speaking, can either strengthen or strain you depending on how you frame it. A simple but powerful tool here is the stress reframe protocol. When you notice the familiar signals of stress, racing thoughts, tension, shallow breath, instead of trying to suppress them, mentally affirm, "My body is mobilizing energy to help me rise to this challenge." This small shift turns stress from an enemy into an ally. You can even rehearse this ahead of time. Visualize a coming stressful event and mentally script how you'll interpret the physiological signs as support, not sabotage. Over time, this mindset rewires the stress response. A study published in Health Psychology found that individuals with a positive stress mindset had lower cortisol levels after completing demanding tasks and recovered more quickly physiologically. And this sets up for the second phase of psych debuff, which is sleep and recovery. This is especially important in middle age, when chronic stress can accelerate aging and impair cognitive performance. If you're used to seeing stress as a sign of failure or vulnerability, this reframe takes practice, but it is trainable. Mindset is not about ignoring difficulty, it's about choosing your interpretation in a way that keeps your brain online and your body adaptive. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all stress, life will never offer that, but to engage with it in a way that builds strength. When you begin seeing stress as a signal of importance, a marker that something matters, you convert what was once a drain into a catalyst. And that shift doesn't just feel empowering, it changes your biology. While much of stress management focuses on reducing or avoiding stress, some of the most powerful research in neuroscience points to the opposite. Training your body to become more tolerant of stress through controlled exposure. This concept, known as stress inoculation, is rooted in the same principle used to build immunity. Small, deliberate doses of discomfort that strengthen the system over time. One of the most effective protocols for this is cold exposure, such as a cold shower or brief immersion in cold water. A 2021 study from the Netherlands demonstrated that participants who practiced regular cold exposure experienced a more resilient stress response, including reduced cortisol release during actual psychological stressors. Here's what's happening in your nervous system when you voluntarily place yourself in a mildly stressful environment, like a cold shower, a breath hold, or a difficult workout. Your brain begins to decouple the physical sensation of discomfort from the emotional interpretation of panic. Over time, this builds what researchers call physiological flexibility, your body's ability to return to baseline more quickly after stress. Another practical method is controlled breath holds, which activate a mild internal stressor while teaching the body to stay calm under pressure. These aren't extreme protocols. Even a 15-second cold shower or a 30-second breath hold can engage this adaptation. Think of it like lifting weights for your nervous system. The key is that you're choosing the stress, which flips your brain's interpretation from helplessness to control, and that shift alone reduces cortisol and builds confidence. If you've ever felt that you break down easily under pressure or feel flooded by emotion, stress inoculation can change that. Over time, you learn that intensity does not equal danger, and that your body can handle more than you think. To begin, choose one small, controlled discomfort each day. A minute of cold water at the end of your shower, a short hike uphill, or even a moment of stillness when you would normally reach for distraction. Stay with the feeling, not to punish yourself, but to build capacity. Research shows that exposing yourself to discomfort voluntarily strengthens top-down control over stress, improving resilience. In a world filled with unpredictable stressors, training your system to stay steady through chosen challenge may be one of the most empowering things you can do, because the more calm you can find in discomfort, the more resilient you become, not just in biology, but in life. Throughout this exploration of stress biology, we have uncovered how your brain and body interact in response to challenge, and more importantly, how you can take actionable steps to regain control over cortisol and stay calm. We began by understanding the brain's threat detection system, the dynamic between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, and how building awareness of your stress triggers allows you to pause and respond with intention instead of reactivity. We then discovered how specific breathing techniques, particularly physiological sighs, provide a direct pathway to calm your nervous system and reduce cortisol within minutes. Next, we learned that light exposure, especially morning sunlight, is a powerful natural regulator of your cortisol rhythm, reinforcing alertness in the day and supporting restful sleep at night. We also explored the neuroscience of affect labeling, naming your emotions to quiet the amygdala and shift your brain into a state of reflection rather than overwhelm. Beyond that, we examined how your mindset about stress itself shapes your biology, turning what could be damaging into a catalyst for growth by reframing stress as a tool for performance rather than a threat. Finally, we delved into stress inoculation, the deliberate practice of brief, controlled discomfort, such as cold exposure or breath holds, to build physiological resilience and strengthen your capacity to tolerate real-world stressors. Taken together, these 6 tools form a comprehensive toolkit grounded in neuroscience and behavioral science, offering practical ways to manage stress without medication or complicated interventions. The true power comes from consistent practice. These are not one-time fixes, but protocols for rewiring your brain and nervous system over weeks and months. The why behind this effort is profound. Mastering your stress response not only improves focus, mood, and energy, but also protects your brain from the long-term wear of chronic cortisol exposure. It supports emotional regulation in relationships, boosts immune function, and slows biological aging. I invite you to begin today by choosing just one tool, perhaps a morning sunlight ritual, a few minutes of controlled breathing, or labeling your emotions when stress arises. Make it a daily habit and watch how your brain and body adapt. As you do, consider liking this video sharing your experience in the comments, and subscribing for more science-based strategies to help you live with greater clarity, calm, and resilience. This is a journey of empowerment, a path toward becoming someone who not only survives stress, but thrives in the face of it.